Okay, so let's talk about episodic memories a little bit more. Episodic memories are rich in sensory detail, and we can put ourselves back into that episode and recall all that sensory detail. So, for example, I was in San Francisco in 1989, and I recall very clearly where I was when the earthquake struck in October of 1989. And I can recall the sound. I can recall looking up and watching the building shake. I can recall running to the back of the yard. I can recall many things. And so this type of being able to recall the sensory feeling, the sensory experience, is something that's particular to episodic memory. I once heard a writer who was a memoir writer, and she talked about how anyone can remember more about their childhood, in more rich detail. And the technique that she used was to, for instance, put yourself into a car that you may have ridden in as a child, and try to remember the color of the seat, the smell of the car. Was there a dog smell? Were there littered coffee cups on the ground? Just to recall, how did the windows go down? Were they wind or were they push button? Was there 4 doors or 2 doors, etc.? So you can recall all those details. Now, some people are better at that than others, and the truth of the matter is that while I can recall a lot about experiencing the 1989 earthquake, I have no idea what I was wearing, and I don't really remember whether there was a wind in the air. So there's a limit to my ability to recall that, to dive back into that episode. Our ability to accurately recall things varies across individuals, but in addition, our ability to accurately recall things is kind of iffy. And so this has really been beautifully demonstrated by a cognitive psychologist, one of the leaders, in fact, one of the the fathers of cognitive psychology, who died just a couple of years ago, and that's Ulrich Neisser. And Ulrich Neisser did an experiment right after the Challenger shuttle blew up. The next day, he asked a whole bunch of people, where were you when you heard that the Challenger blew up? And they told him the whole detail about where they were when the Challenger blew up. And 3 years later, he contacted these same people, and less than 10% of them recalled the same event, the same details as they had told him the day after the Challenger blew up. So our memories change, they shift, they morph. They're not stuck in time. And we'll see the neural circuitry that gives rise to that. There's an interesting postscript to that, which is that Ulrich Neisser himself used to tell the story about how he was curled up in an armchair listening to a baseball game when he heard that Pearl Harbor had been bombed. It was only many years later that he realized impossible memory, could not have happened. We don't play baseball in December. Pearl Harbor happened in December. So it was not an accurate memory. In fact, there's a kernel there. And the kernel is that there was a football game going on that was interrupted to announce the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And the football game was not only is it a professional sports game, but it was between the Giants and the Dodgers. The Giants and the Dodgers are two teams that exist both in American football and in American baseball. So he had changed the memory. It was now inaccurate, but it was inaccurate in a way that kind of makes some sense. What I want to leave you with as far as the phenomenology of episodic memories is that they are not accurate snapshots of what we have experienced. They're not tape recordings. Just like what we perceive is not a tape recording is not a camera shot, a photograph. What we remember is not, it's an interpretation. And that interpretation shifts across time. So just as we interpret sensory input, we also interpret past sensory input, and we change that interpretation as time goes on. In the next segment, we're going to start to look at the neural circuitry, the neural underpinnings of these various different types of memory.